Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast. I'm founder and CEO Jim West, and today I have a wonderful guest. And this is a long list of accolades and titles here, so I'm going to just try to get to the top ones. But we have an award-winning speaker, author, corporate advisor, CIO, digital transformation leader. So, without further ado, we have Miss Ann, and it's Duncan, right? Like Dunkin' Donuts.
That's right, Jim.
Ann Duncan. So, Ann, did I miss some titles there? Because that's those are some pretty big ones right there already.
Well, it's funny because I used to joke that the federal government pays you in titles, not in money.
Hmm.
When I was at DOE and at EPA, but even more so at DOE, I had this long list of senior official for that, senior official for that, like 12 of them. But we won't go through all those.
We'll go through all of those.
I'd have
Yeah.
to go look at my list. I literally kept a list of
Oh,
them.
you kept the list. Okay. A lot of folks in government and even on the commercial side, they wear multiple hats, right? I once was considered for a role that was in Arizona at a particular organization. I won't name it right now, but it wore five hats. And I was like, but you're paying for one hat. The salary
That's
raises for
right.
the one hat, but you're telling me I have five hats of responsibilities. But yeah, it's very common. But you know what? It also speaks to the fact that you're so capable of doing so much, right? And that's the other slippery slope. When you demonstrate excellence, phenomenal leadership and strategy, they're going to use every ounce they get out of a human being. So that only is a testament to your experience and great value that you bring to any organization. So with all those platitudes out the way, let's get to one of these titles here that I know a lot of people, they'll hear this term. It's a very popular buzzword, but maybe a lot of folks don't understand all of the things that go on with it. And it's digital transformation. So it sounds very cool. Obviously, transformation is like a transformer. It's going from a car to a robot to a truck to a plane. But what does that mean? Give us kind of like a good, general definition, and let's maybe go into just a little bit of the weeds.
Yeah, so that's a great question because we don't talk about defining digital transformation very often. And digital transformation, the way that I would define it is there's a technology upgrade, but more importantly, there's a change in the way you do business. So digital transformation is not I'm going to go from paper and I'm going to replicate my process online, or I'm going to go from this legacy product I built and build the exact same process in a new system. The goal of a digital transformation is really to do two things, right? One is to upgrade your technology stack and to get technology that's easier to manage. And so, generally speaking, right now, that's going from, say, something that is that's homegrown or that's a COTS product to a software as a service that you can configure and let someone else do everything else in the background. But more importantly, it's looking at your business, looking at how your business operates, and changing the process that you had already to better support your end users and your customers. And your customers may be your end users, or your end users may be internal, and they support your external customers. But you want to make sure that ultimately you're serving your users most effectively. And the government has a long history of challenges with digital transformation, um, in part from not understanding, sometimes not understanding who the customer was. There are a lot of other issues,
Hmm.
but I have a classic experience at EPA where no one had ever talked to the customer, and they were literally building the wrong thing.
Hmm.
So.
And of course, like in anything, building a project or program or even software development, if you don't get it right, planning is everything, right? They always say measure twice, cut once. And just as you just humorously explained, a lot of times they are going really fast in the wrong direction. And I always tell people accuracy is better than speed. You could be super fast, but if you're accurate, accuracy always beats, as they say, slow is fast. And with digital transformation, has there been any projects that you've been a part of, whether you was advising, leading the strategy, or actually part of the planning that have been really big in the past few years? When we think about transformation, we think of like what you mentioned with technology and innovation. AI has been a big buzzword. Some people almost getting sick of hearing about AI so much, and there's a lot of naysayers coming out now across LinkedIn and other platforms talking about, it's not that big. It's a lot of hype right now. But even before then, the big buzzword before AI, we could say, and it's still a big thing, is cloud because not everybody's got cloud right. So cloud
Mhm.
was the big digital transformation shift, and then today I would say it's like how do we incorporate and embrace the power of AI? How can we use it to enhance business operations? But what have you been touching and working on? I know you may not do the confidentiality, be able to get into the details of it, but maybe you could talk at a high level for us.
Yeah, I mean, a few of the things in terms of transformation that we did at DOE before I left, or some of them are still in progress when I left. So first of all, was in fact a shift to the cloud. So we shut down the main headquarters data center in Germantown. I think there might be a server or two still lurking out there that runs some stuff from my office, but basically we shut down a large data center, moved everything to the cloud. In some cases, there was a true digital transformation, right? They took the application and redesigned it or replaced it with a commercial off-the-shelf product or replaced it with a SaaS product. In other cases, people just lifted those and shifted them up to the cloud. But the ultimate end of that was that we got that particularly large data center out of our portfolio, other data centers as well, that we've been moving people out of and moving them into the cloud. And so having those folks, your management of your systems doesn't go away when you do that. But it's very true that you can refocus some of those folks to really be thinking about the application more than the infrastructure. There's still infrastructure work that needs to be done. Doesn't go away. When you get these people saying, "Oh my God, my job's going to go away," so,
Yeah.
your job's not going to go away because we're in the cloud. So that's one thing. A second thing is that. We've been in the process of moving the HR systems from a bunch of homegrown systems, and it's a combination of some Oracle stuff along with a bunch of applications built to sort of glue it all together. Some legacy databases, some connections to DoD because DoD does payroll for DOE, and all that. Vast majority of that is moving to Workday.
Mhm.
So that's a big transformation effort that we have underway. In terms of other things, incorporating AI into transformation. We built some AI-enabled chatbots, and we built an AI-enabled chatbot. We didn't think it was a particularly big deal, but then we had multiple other departments saying, "Hey, can we have your code? This is really cool."
Mhm.
And the thing about AI, and I think this is an important point, right? A chatbot relies on a small language model, not a large language model. And I think that much of the value we're going to see from AI for companies and for applications is going to be those small language models that are very specific, that have their data in it, as opposed to these large language models that have consumed the internet and now are consuming AI generated content. And, pretty soon the models are just going to be regurgitating
Yeah.
all AI generated content. And then the other digital important transformation we made was really to move away from building applications, um, uh, on from scratch and moving to low code, no code platforms. So a
Mhm.
big shift towards ServiceNow, towards in some cases Salesforce, and other tool sets where we're able to have people learn how to develop in those environments really quickly, where we can grab components and tools that they've already built, sometimes even the application they've already built, and we can share those across the enterprise as well.
Mhm. I want to offer a little bit of clarity to what Ann just said because it's tremendously important. People hear about DevSecOps, they hear about secure software code development, etc. And so we hear the term baseline, and baseline is when you want all your systems to be kind of to a certain standard where they're almost cookie cutter. Therefore, you don't have what's called snowflakes in your network, where there's these unique one-off systems that will get out of it's hard to manage vulnerabilities, patch manage those systems, and so forth. So when you're trying to get things, when you have homegrown software where someone that's now been 5 years retired or no longer on the planet, heaven forbid, some people do pass on, and now you have zero support. No one knows who's the developer anymore. It's just been something that people just live with. So when you bring it into a standard platform like a ServiceNow or other like Oracle based, you're bringing it into more of a universal standard to where other people, other developers can quickly pick up, update things, modify functions. So it makes it easier in the longer term to make changes, to update it, and to keep things standardized. Because when you do have all these that become snowflakes, you don't have a baseline anymore. And so a fundamental security issue is making sure everything is easy to O&M, to maintain, to operate, and to update as time passes, as we find vulnerabilities and or need to just change functionality as well. So I love that
Right.
you got to touch a lot of these great projects.
Yeah. So in that point, right, you're inheriting probably 90% of your controls then, maybe
Hmm.
more sometimes. And that means that it's people can more quickly get things done and live, right? And in private sector, sometimes if you don't inherit all those controls, people are just going to cut the corner. In the government, it means you're not going live.
Hmm.
So it's just hugely important to have those platforms where it's easier for people to develop. And it also means we can drive people to those platforms and say, if you want to go fast, go to this platform because you'll get better treatment from security, you'll get done faster, and it makes the whole system work better.
So one of the organizations that you was the chief information officer for was Department of Energy, and you'd mentioned it as some of the innovation and transformation projects that you've worked on. A lot of folks out there, when they think of big organizations, they think obviously DoD, they'll think about Department of State, CIA, FBI, all the usual three-letter agency suspects, NSA. But Department of Energy has a huge and a tremendously important mission for national security, and I dare I say it, global security. I believe it crosses into that lane. So we talk of geopolitics as well. So could you just give us kind of like the high level of what the mission of DOE is and why is that important to people not only in America but in the large community of the world?
Yeah, so the government has this habit, the US government has this habit of naming things badly. All right. So commerce is not not a commerce organization, it's basically a science organization. Right? USDA is basically an aid organization. It provides entitlements to folks. So DOE is equally badly named. And so in fact, a great book that kind of goes through all this in 5 chapters is Michael Lewis's Fifth Risk. And the fifth risk is actually of the five is about DOE and about project management to sort of steal the end of his book. But anyway, so DOE does four basic things and maybe five. So number one is nuclear weapons. It's so nuclear weapons manufacturing, stockpile stewardship, and nuclear nonproliferation, which includes things like export controls and being engaged in that space. So that's number one. Number two is the Power Marketing Administration. So DOE buys bulk power from TVA, the Bureau of Reclamation, the Army Corps of Engineers, and they sell that power and operate the grid in 36 states. So in most of this country, the grid is actually being operated by the Department of Energy on your
Wow.
behalf, even though you don't buy your power directly from DOE.
Hmm.
And by the way, it's being secured by the Department of Energy as well. Number three is policy, right? So energy policy, and that is the thing that changes the most from one administration to another. How are we driving in the Biden administration was how are we driving the clean energy transition? In this administration, it's energy dominance. It's different words. In many cases, the goal is the same. This transition, the goals are slightly different, but the fact of the matter is that it's about how do you drive the use of energy in our economy? How do we derive the development of new energy? This administration has really doubled down on nuclear energy development, which is great. They're trying to help people get nuclear energy to market. They're also trying to help with battery technologies and some other things. So that's the third thing. And the fourth thing is the national labs. So 17 national labs, the crown jewel of the United States government. This is the secret sauce of innovation in the United States, right? The engine of innovation in the United States and in many cases in the world. They do research for DOE, DOD, and basically anyone else that wants to pay for it and that we say is okay. So,
Hmm.
that includes foreign governments, foreign companies, US companies. They collaborate closely with universities. So the university that I work for now, Georgia Tech, has over $1 billion. It's $1.4 billion in sponsored research between DoD and DOE. So tremendous amount of work there. And the thing I didn't mention, which I say is kind of a fifth, is cleanup. It is not part of the NNSA nuclear mission, but it is cleanup from the nuclear mission. So DOE is almost done with most of the cleanup sites. There were over 100, I think, from the Manhattan Project, as well as the Cold War and companies. So DOE inherited some private sites as well. So for example, they just wrapped up cleanup of a uranium mine and processing site in New Mexico that the owners went bankrupt, and so the government took care of that. The long tail in that work there is Hanford. I think that the date for Hanford completion is 2080.
Hmm.
And that would be the last cleanup site. We made a little mess at Hanford in World War II, but honestly, the Cold War was when we made a big mess at Hanford
Yeah.
and did things like mix different kinds of waste in tanks, and that's going to take some cleanup time. But all of that is the DOE mission. There are also a couple other things that sort of to hide in there. The Energy Information Administration has all the data about
Mhm.
energy, and then of course FERC is loosely associated with DOE, and they are the regulator for the energy sector.
Mhm. And so for folks that are like, okay, I got a little bit of it, but I'm still a little confused. I'll kind of try to explain. The first thing she mentioned is, nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. And nuclear energy is a very powerful thing. It's very dangerous as well. As you mentioned, still doing cleanup from past things from like World War II, right? Radiation lasts for centuries, right? And so doing the cleanup is not, it's a very thorough, very, deliberate process. And so it's not just, go bring a mop and a bucket. No, it's much more involved than that. But the thing which you mentioned is innovation and the research in the labs, when you're protecting things, like you have to be able to use the top level, top shelf security standards and measures because we are talking about very powerful and dangerous things. So the ability for a hacker to get into these systems has got to be negative zero. I know there's no such thing as negative zero. We're talking absolute math, but it has to be as near to zero as possible. So a lot of these systems could potentially be air gapped. There's systems that are called like Type 4 cryptographically isolated type networks, particularly in the R&D realms and so forth. So they have to embrace when we talk about like quantum, post-quantum cryptography, they have to do these tests. And, she mentioned Department of Commerce, right? Badly named, but NIST falls under Department of Commerce. And so NIST sets a lot of standards for both federal and for the government across the board. And so NIST sets these standards, and there's all like CNSA, and there's a lot of other committees and groups that work all together to try to secure systems. But DOE has to take it to another level, hence all the research and development that they have to do. And so they lead that. And we don't hear a lot about DOE in the news. And that's a good thing. We don't want DOE to always be in the news because a lot of their work has to stay classified or confidential because it's very sensitive work. But the importance is there nonetheless. So I just wanted to kind of foot stomp. It's a very tremendously important mission. And she was the CIO for that organization, running these things, doing those important digital transformation projects. I don't want to go too much dwell on the DOE stuff because I know there's a lot you can't talk about for obvious reasons, but let's talk about the other hats you wear. So you're also a speaker and an author. So let's talk about author. There's a couple papers I saw on your LinkedIn profile, if you don't mind speaking a little bit about them. So let me pull this up here. I see one here, Enhancing U.S. Power Grid by Using AI to Accelerate Permitting. And so that's got AI right there. It's got power grid. We always hear about how we got our power grids are at risk. And then the next one is scaling IT modernization, which again is in the realm of embracing innovation and technology. So which one is the more exciting to read? If someone only could read one of those two, what would you say, hey, this is something that's important to most people that they should read?
Well, I would say that if you don't work in IT, then the power grid is probably more important to you. So this is the first paper I wrote since I've been back, or since I've been in academia. Last paper I wrote in academia was when I was in grad school. I got to work with an undergrad student I recruited, and we had a great opportunity to talk about some of the challenges and potential solutions for the grid, because there are tremendous constraints on the power grid, both in terms of sources of power and in terms of being able to get power on the grid between interconnection queues, local permitting issues, environmental permitting issues. It's a very complex problem.
Mhm.
And I actually I thought I knew a lot more than I did when I started writing the paper. Um, so it was a learning experience both for my student and for me. And definitely a great opportunity. There's a lot of work happening in this space. So
Mhm.
we encourage people to better understand the challenges that are facing the grid.
So one of the things that's come up, and I don't know if a lot of people are tracking it because it doesn't make the top 10 list. When like Facebook or rather Meta or Google ABC Corp and all these are standing up data centers left and right to feed the AI,
Hmm.
ingestion because people are just demanding more and more AI and more apps and more power. But people have to understand that this power comes at a cost of energy, right?
Hmm.
So we're seeing like areas like New Orleans and other areas that, we hear the good part about it, where they're opening up a big data center. It's going to employ a lot of people in the community. So it's good news, right? Jobs. But the thing that people aren't talking a lot about is obviously the drain on power grids because you put this facility there in places like Louisiana that are not as densely populated as, say, like the Chicago area or rapidly growing areas like Huntsville, Alabama, for example. They're going to see a large influx of people in the next 5 to 8 years.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of these areas that are going to see an influx because obviously if Meta stands up, finishes that, I don't know if it's finished yet, but the point being as these data centers open to support the demand for AI and for more cloud computing and more application software as a service, we need more power. So my question is, before you left the DOE, and I hate to go back to DOE, but how high of a concern does this rank for DOE? You mentioned like 36, 37 states, I believe, that the DOE provides power to. Is this going to be a concern that people should start thinking about or at least being in the know about?
So it's certainly a concern. I think, there's some challenges to understand how big a concern it is. And you can read five different reports, five different papers. You will get five different answers as
Mhm.
to how much power is needed, how soon it's needed. And there's a couple reasons for that, right? One is if you just look at interconnection queues, it costs nothing to throw something in the interconnection queue. The interconnection queue is running 5 to 7 years long depending upon because there's actually multiple queues, so which one you're in. Um, and so people throw any projects in the queue, and 70 to 80% of those fall out. So if a bunch of major generation projects fall out of the queue, the problem is not as big as we thought.
Okay.
That's one thing. The second thing is that on the flip side of boy, we should be concerned, there are a lot of sources for new power right now. So gas turbines have I think it's a 36, 38-month lead time right now across the board. Somebody who shall remain nameless bought up about 200 of them and blew out the queue. Um, uh, Transformers have a multi-year wait time for them right now as well. That's not a power source, but it's an issue in terms of grid capacity. Um, the administration is not showing favor to AI and solar, and those aren't dispatchable anyway. So if you have AI and solar, you also need some sort of dispatchable power, whether that's battery power, gas generators as backup, or something. Small modular reactors really aren't ready yet. It's going to be a few more years. Fusion is a few more years away. Beyond that, people are looking at geothermal. They're looking at clean hydrogen, looking at clean ammonia. Where there is geothermal, that's a great solution, but it's not everywhere. So, finding the additional energy sources and getting them on the grid is quite challenging right now in terms of how you're going to get that additional power source, which is one of the reasons why you're seeing Microsoft wanting to restart Three Mile Island, why you're
Mhm.
seeing people building their own generation facilities right at the data center that they want because they want control of their own destiny. And also, often municipalities or power companies are giving them some kickback for doing it themselves and not creating more stress on the grid. So, this is not an insurmountable problem by any stretch of the imagination. But it is challenging. Uh, where are we going to get the additional power sources? Gas turbines, wind, solar, geothermal. What's it going to be, and how are we going to get it? So that's sort of the second big challenge there. So one of the things we're seeing in terms of cost is that it's not actually the power consumption by these data centers that's driving costs. It's actually the transmissions build out, right? That's what's driving rates up is people building out the transmission. Because you think about it, if you put another big user on the system who's paying commercial rates, your rates should go down, not up.
Okay.
And so what's really driving that is that building transmission lines. And there's some places like California where the amount of off-grid resources, amount of distributed resources is also having some impact because, if I have solar panels on my house and batteries, I'm not paying anything, or I'm paying $10 a month in California. That's probably less than it costs them, to transmit the power and to collect the power back from me. So there are some challenges there. But the other thing I'll add is there are technologies out there now that are getting some traction in AI that will greatly reduce the processing power
Hmm.
required to deliver AI. So that's going to help as well. There are also sources of renewable power that are external to the U.S. that are in the Iceland, Greenland, places like that. There's no reason why that power could not be moved or data centers could not live next to that power. Some people say, well, I need my AI data center right next to me. I'm like, but do you? Because if you do all the transactions in the data center and send your final results, latency is not an issue. So
Hmm.
anyway, there's a whole lot going on there. And so the answer to whether I should be worried really depends kind of where you live, how many data centers are being built near you, how much power is available, how much transition capacity is available. Um, I'm disinclined to believe that any utilities are going to allow such a level of commercial demand to come on that they will have brownouts or blackouts for their residential customers. I think it's just such a bad look. They
Hmm.
won't do it. I actually had someone ask me about repurposing a very large commercial manufacturing facility, an industry that a heavy industry that takes lots of power, right? So that's another thing, right? You might take that site that has a tremendous power feed to it, put a data center on it. Anyway, so I've rambled on about that a lot, but bottom line is, as a regular person, I would not be too terribly worried about my home electricity service, but
Yeah.
I,
Well, you can
I never
always get
say
one of
never.
those wind-up flashlights or one of those Google, the early laptops that they were going to give to developing nations with the hand crank on it. So we could always go to levels of technology to exist, right?
Or
Um,
install your own solar.
or yes. So you mentioned, that we're, with different types of emerging energy sources and developments in that space that we're maybe, 5 to 8 years away from those catching up. And I love how, advancements in technology and finding more efficient ways to either generate or to retain, because a lot of times energy is lost, dissipated in the process of capturing it and transporting it, so forth. So I love the way how technology innovation, and we're still trying to improve what we currently have, trying to, meet in the middle somewhere, right? Um, but then one of the things you mentioned, I think turbines and like they have a certain lifespan of how long they last, and there's also like waiting lists for certain components and so forth because obviously you can only manufacture so many of these very heavy and oftentimes very complex devices and machines. Is there any concerns, because another buzzword that's been around the National Capital Region for the past 6, 7 years has been supply chain risk management, right?
Mhm.
And so is this another concern? And it doesn't directly hit cyber in the sense of, replacement parts, if you will, or spare parts, but is this a concern where, we may need to fund these innovations to help get us off the immediate dependency of if we have a major outage or something that attacks these components at some level?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, right? Supply chain is a huge issue. We are not doing ourselves any favors with supply chain by picking fights with other countries who potentially have those components.
Good
And
point.
so, I think there's some thought that needs to go into our supply chain about, what's truly critical and what should we be doing ourselves, or at least have some capacity in, right? I mean, I've been 25 years now, I've been pointing out to no one who will listen, that, we have no machine tool industry in this country. If something were to happen, it'd probably be good to have a machine tool industry.
Mhm.
Probably be good if we could make our own semiconductors. It'd probably be good if we knew how to manufacture a gas turbine. I don't really feel the need to be able to, manufacture a wireless earbuds or,
Yeah.
this ball here, right? I don't need to do that. But there are certain things that we really probably should be able to do for ourselves. Um, and so, I think some of those spare parts we can probably save ourselves, through additive manufacture or rapid prototyping, not just additive because some
Yeah.
of it's
Right.
subtractive.
Yeah.
But we built a lot of capabilities to look at a part and be able to replicate that part. I was just in our manufacturing lab at Georgia Tech recently, and they were talking about how they were doing that for a customer where to go get a new one from the supplier would be incredibly expensive, but they could actually remanufacture their component and return it to them for a tenth of the cost of
Yeah.
going and getting a new material. So I think supply chain is actually, as you know, a cybersecurity risk as well, but just the physical supply
Yep.
chain, it is spare parts can be really problematic. And I do think um, that as long as that spare part is something we understand, and obviously the issue then gets to if that spare part has a bunch of electronic components in it, and we don't understand what's going on, on that chip inside, and we can't replicate that, that's a problem. But as long as it's a physical object that we can replicate, I think we can mitigate that a little bit with domestic ability to do some manufacturing, rapid prototyping when things are critical. But that's not a solution for the average company to go find someone to build something for them.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's we, I would like it if our trade policy was thinking a little more carefully about what the true risks are to our economy and where we need to bulk up our capabilities to reduce risk, as opposed to, just like, well, who sells us more than we buy from them, which
Oh yeah.
is not
So
the
I
way
love
to.
a couple things there that's just brilliant that I want to kind of revisit there. So I'll start with the last thing you was talking about, just in general manufacturing parts to get it at a like tenth of the price, right? I love that the lab at Georgia was Georgia Tech, right? Was able to manufacture a part that, like I said, tenth of the price. And so some folks, you might have seen videos on the internet where you see someone that's like trying to get a very expensive car part for like a luxury car or a supercar, but then they find it like Honda makes the same part for like a
Right.
dollar, but they would have paid the luxury car company like $1,000 plus for that little bitty plastic widget or etc. And so I love that when that happens. But in supply chain, one of the key things that Ann was talking about, she mentioned semiconductors. And folks, right now there is something that's playing out on a global stage that you should be probably aware of because it does impact you. Do folks remember just about a couple years ago where buying a car was such a big deal, a hassle? There was a limited supply of this because one of the big things that we had a disruption in was the semiconductor market. And so about 70 something percent, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's close between 70 and 80% of all semiconductors are manufactured in one country. And folks, if you don't know what that country is now, you need to add that to your news feeds and start paying attention because there's a lot of activity from a geopolitical stance focused around this one small island nation of Taiwan. Taiwan manufactures, like I said, 70 80% of the global semiconductor market. And earlier this year, Jensen, the CEO of NVIDIA, announced that the AI-enabled chips, the next generation of these GPUs, are being manufactured in Taiwan. So the latest, greatest AI-enabled chipsets are being made there, and I believe it's 16 or 17 U.S. patents involved in the process of those chips. A country nearby, China, that day that Jensen made that announcement, they leaked through some random news source, but like they like to do. But information was put out there that they had a 4 hour invasion plan. They could take over Taiwan in 4 hours. That was definitely signaling the message about how important Taiwan is to the global economy, not only just the U.S. So when Ann mentions that we should be establishing semiconductor factories and facilities, we definitely 110% should. So again, we hope that the current administration and maybe even the next future administrations take these things seriously because, it might not be an immediate whole chest wound, as I would call it right now, but I think in the next 10 years, it could easily and rapidly overnight become one. So I love that when we're talking about supply chain risk management. I know we could talk all day about tech, innovation, digital transformation because you have such a stacked career with so many stories, but I want to respect your time. So I'd like to get into the part of the my favorite question of the podcast I ask all my guests. So we could go back in time to when at Ann's day one, when you said, I want IT cyber and all of this to be my career. Is there a story there that you could share with us?
Well, I mean, I'm an engineer by education, a manufacturing engineer. I did not set out to be in IT and cyber. Um, and honestly, the story is that I worked for Hewlett Packard for a very long time, and I tell people the best thing that Hewlett Packard ever did for me was to hire me, and the second best thing they did was lay me off. Because my first job in IT, my first couple jobs in IT were at HP. When I got reorganized from a senior leadership position in operations to IT, then I had the opportunity to do that job. A number of jobs, including being the IT director, which was really the CIO for Indigo, which is an Israeli company we acquired. So they got me on that path. I went back to R&D. And then when they laid me off, I needed a job. And, the first job I got was as a CIO, and I've been a CIO ever since. So, it all worked out. So,
Yeah. Awesome. So, along your journey, and you've had a tremendous career. I mean, I think like a 4 or 5 time CIO. I mean, again, a tremendous career in leadership. Have there been people, and the goal of this question is it's not meant to be name dropping. It could be easily confused for that, but it's more to pay homage to either mentors, bosses, colleagues, coworkers, or just people in industry that you said, wow, they're level 99. I admire this person. I hope I could be like them one day. And it's just to kind of pay honor to the folks that have been a positive impact along your journey.
yeah, I think in a lot of cases, we don't even know who those people are, right? I think about, I found out sort of after the fact that my first job, I got recommended by the same guy for two jobs. That it was someone I didn't know all that well at that point. The guy I went to grad school with, his name's Bob. And Bob recommended me for two jobs, and I don't know why, but hey, thank you, Bob. So, and I think a lot of cases people do stuff for us we never know. I don't know who nominated me for the Fed 100 or things like that. People just do things for you. But the person that I really always like to mention because he's amazing was when I was at EPA, I worked for two people. I worked for the deputy administrator and the administrator. That's sort of how it works. You work for the administrator, but you really day to day work for the deputy. And the deputy at EPA is a guy named Stan Myberg, who I had checked. Stan swore he was finally retiring from Wake Forest this year. So hopefully he really has retired. Um, but just the best boss I ever had. By the time you get to that level in organization, you might never see your boss.
Mhm.
And so Stan really stood out for being the guy who did all the right things in terms of engaging the team that worked for him, as well as being there and being supportive. I had some really horrible thing happen while I was working for him, and he was just like there checking on me, making sure I was okay, supporting me, but also just a great leader. So there are some
Wonderful.
great people in the world that I ran across my share of jerks, but thankfully I ran across my share of great people too.
And it's those few people that really make the most impact on us, right? Um, so this is a part of the podcast where I like to take a little quick break from the tech talk and the career profile stuff. So it's what I call my moment of levity. So I like to ask my guests a couple rapid fire questions. They're silly, they're meant to be fun, lighthearted, no right or wrong answer. So if you're ready, I'm going to fire some questions your way.
Good.
First answer comes to mind. Let's go ahead and divide the room with this one: Star Wars or Star Trek?
That's a tough one. I mean, I like them both, but I think I have to go for Star Trek.
Star Trek. Most engineers, about 99 out of 100 engineers would go Star Trek because I mean Scotty, he was
Also,
an engineer.
it's engineering, but it's also optimistic, right?
Yes.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
So
What's your favorite period of Star Trek? So that was my follow-up. Is it the original group? Is it the Next Generation? Deep Space Nine? Maybe the new version, the Voyager, I think, or Discovery?
yeah, I'm not. Well, it's sort of what I've watched most recently. I've really been enjoying Discovery and even the other newest one, Strange New Worlds.
Okay.
I like them all. I liked yeah, they're all pretty good. So
Awesome. Here's the next one. Cake or pie?
unless it's my mom's apple pie, it's got to be cake.
You already answered the next one. It's apple pie, but hot or cold apple pie?
Cold.
Cold apple pie. Okay.
Uh,
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
I don't care because I don't eat hot dogs.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
no, it's not a sandwich.
not a
It's not a
sandwich. Okay. All right. What was the last book you've read, and what was your favorite book of all time?
Well, so I last night I just finished Breakneck. I gotta read the whole title before it says it's China's Quest to Engineer the Future, by Dan Wang. And I was supposed to do a book club with him this afternoon. Unfortunately, he's sick, so we're not doing it. But I just finished it last night, right in the nick of time for the book club. Fascinating read. Highly recommend it. You warned me about the favorite book question. And I still struggle with the favorite book. I might have to fall back to Hitchhiker's Guide, even though that's probably not my favorite. I
Classic.
really like it. It's classic, so
Awesome. Well, if you wouldn't mind giving me the link to that first book you mentioned, I'll make sure it's in the description below. So, folks, if you're watching right now, you don't have to do the Google search. Ann will give me the link and just click pause and check out that book. Um, a lot of times with our busy, demanding careers and jobs and all the things that you got going on in your universe, a lot of professionals do make time for causes that are near and dear to their hearts. So, the goal of this question is there a nonprofit charity, volunteer organization, whether you've contributed your time, energy, or money to them, or just one that you believe in what they're doing some positive, tremendous work in the world that you want to shine a light on.
I have too many. But I think for me, the number one thing that I think I mean, right now I've got to give a shout out to any food bank out there with all these feds not working. So please donate to your local food bank. But my go-to thing outside of sort of academia and politics is the shelters, right? Whatever your local animal shelter is, I still give to the animal shelter in Vancouver, Washington, where I adopted a dog many years ago. She was an amazing dog, and I'm like, I'm just gonna keep paying it forward to them. So definitely support your local shelter.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And if you have any links and socials, if you send us to me, and I'll put them in the description below. Um, Now I want to ask, what's next for you? Is there a conference you're speaking at soon in the next, 3 to 6 months? Is there a book you might be working on? What's some news that you can share with us, a little bit of insight into your next, year ahead?
Yeah, so I'm just like still trying to figure out my new world of being on my own. I've got, my appointment at Georgia Tech 25% of the time. Did some big speaking engagements earlier this year. Was just in Japan recently for cyber tech. Was at Davos. Was in India with The Economist. Don't have any big gigs coming up right this minute. If anyone wants to talk to me about a big gig, would love to talk to them about it. We've got some things at Georgia Tech coming up that I'm really excited about. This fall, we're doing something. I can't remember the name of it. I can get it for you, but December 2nd and 3rd, we've got an energy sector conference coming up on campus. And then the students in March are holding their Energy Club conference, which is awesome. I'm getting to support them. They're having a hackathon, and I get to judge their hackathon. So it's super fun being on campus and enjoying that stuff. I am working on a book. It's not far enough along really to talk about it yet.
Okay.
Doing some advising. Um, there's been a lot of stuff going on this year. We both moved, right? We were talking about that before we started. And
Hmm.
so every time I turn around, there's stuff in my personal life keeping me from hunting down the activities I should be doing. But my move is mostly done, so hoping to
Awesome.
double back down on doing some speaking. I may be teaching some more classes for Public Sector Network next year on women's leadership, so people can watch out for those as well.
Awesome. And folks, follow her on LinkedIn and keep tabs because she's just still got miles and miles to go and is still doing tremendous work for multiple industries, not just one industry. Multiple industries have benefited from Ann's great work. And we're coming down to the end of it, and I do want to respect your time that you've given me, and thank you for sharing the things you've shared so far. It's been tremendous speaking to you. And again, consider an open invitation to always come back to the podcast, especially to talk about your book when you're ready to share more details on that. But what I do for all my guests, I like to give them the final word. So you can talk about anything you'd like to talk about. It could be cyber related, it could be engineering topic, it could be supply chain innovation, whatever you like to talk about. The floor is yours.
So last words. So I will share. You were talking about car parts, and I will give people a pro tip on car parts. If you have a Porsche, the parts for Porsches and Volkswagens are exactly the same, except the Porsche parts have a P at the end of them and are a lot more expensive. So you can get a Volkswagen part with the same part number for your Porsche and save a lot of money. My father used to restore Porsches, and so that was how I learned that little tidbit over the years.
Uh,
So
P
we'll
for
share it with
pricey.
you.
And
Cool.
thank you so much for being on the Top Cyber Pro podcast. It's been a pleasure.
It's been great, Jim. Thank you.